Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be a position 4 tier list for patch 7.34c, and let's just jump into it because you guys pretty much know what these lists are already. So first we're just going to look at Nature's Prophet, because he's the first S hero, and they did recently nerf, I think in the C patch they actually nerfed this hero, but basically this hero is still a support, pretty much only a 4 though. I would never play this hero as a 5 because it doesn't really have a stun. This Sprout is, I guess, sort of a pseudo-stun, but people have learned very, very quickly, supports and everything, to buy Quelling Blade early if they see a Nature's Prophet on the enemy team. So you're not really stunning people like maybe you did in the first few weeks when people didn't realize this was going to be picked as a support. And you're basically just going to be maxing Sprout because the way this hero works now is this is doing damage, and it's very, very good early game for just harassing, for blocking off people's paths, for trapping people, even if it's for a slight second. There's just a lot of different things you can do with this, and so it's making this hero viable as a support. But you're going to want to play it only as a 4 because it does transition to basically being a core. The other big thing about the hero is because it's a support, you can TP all across the map at all times because you basically put no points in this spell. So the spells that you're going to have are Teleportation and Sprout. I mean, you can put points in this later on, obviously. But early on, you're just going to be using these two to gank and help out lanes and not just sit in your lane where a lot of other supports don't have that, dynamic ability because you have your TP plus this ability. So you can just, constantly watch the map and see, is somebody out of position? Is the safe lane chasing some hero through the jungle or something? I'll TP in front of them, you Sprout them, you hit them, all that kind of stuff. Just typical things. Now, the one weakness of this hero is mid-game, it's kind of bad, I guess. Like, it doesn't do much. You can still be at every fight, but until you get a few items, basically ags or something like that, you don't do all that much. You're just going to be farming. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind, that you don't want to like giga grief the game by doing absolutely nothing, which sometimes happens. But this hero is still very, very good. So even though it did get recently nerfed, it's getting picked a lot. Its win rate's still pretty good. So I put it here in S tier, along with actually Invoker. So Invoker is just a really, really good hero right now, and you can definitely play this hero as a 4 position. Now, this hero is still more popular as a mid and not being played in 4 position as much, because if you're going to pick it, you might as well pick it mid, but you can still definitely play this hero 4. Like, it's completely viable, and it is very, very good. Just with the dynamic of the hero and how they changed it. I already kind of talked about that in the mid lane a little bit, in the mid tier list, and I'm not really an Invoker player, so I'm not going to comment on it too much, but you definitely can play this hero as a 4 position, and it's not griefing, which in the past, maybe sometimes people would say it was griefing, but now it's definitely not. And sort of similar to Nature's Prophet, you kind of just transition into another core. You're not as strong, you're not going to get as many items as the mid Invoker would, but you still are very, very good. Next we have Venge. Venge is just a really, really overall good support. It's probably the best support in the game right now. You can play it as a 4, you can play it as a 5. They did nerf it recently, but it's still too good. This spell just does everything. It does damage, it gives vision, minus armor, damage reduction for the enemy team. You have this stun that eventually like goes to 2 people, and I think, does it still pierce BKB? I actually don't think it does that anymore. No, it doesn't. This used to pierce BKB in level 25, I believe, which is kind of insane that it even did that. But now it doesn't do that, but it just has the shard that bounces to 2 people. Not that you're really getting to 25 anyway that often on this hero, but really you get the ags, you get the shard, you're just a nuisance in fights, swapping people in and out, and now this spell really is the spell. It just does so much. Like, if you get hit by Wave of Terror, you just can't fight. Like, it just seems like such a nothing spell. You're like, oh, Wave of Terror, what does that do? But really, you can't fight unless you dispel this ability, because you just are going to lose every mana battle because you have 30% less damage and you have 6 less armor. So, like, yeah, you're just, as a carry or whatever, you have to, like, dispel this off to fight. And that's honestly the biggest thing with the hero that made it better. I mean, it still does all the same stuff. It's just that this ability is now broken. And it also is amazing for laning. Like, in the laning stage, you trade so well with that ability. Next, we have Earth Spirit. This hero just does everything that Earth Spirit's always done. I mean, this hero hasn't really changed fundamentally in any significant way. over the past few years. It's just that now finally he's getting more play when other things have gotten nerfed and he's gotten buffed, which is really cool to see because this hero is very, very good. If you're a good Earth Spirit player, you can just absolutely take over and dominate games. This hero is even being played from the mid lane, but you can still definitely play it from the forward position. It is very, very good. All the same reasons that Earth Spirit is good. He just has this low cooldown stun. He has a silence. His ultimate, you can't underestimate the damage against supports because it can be very, very effective. He's great early game for ganking mid. He's great at rotating to the other lanes, or, you can just hang out in your lane and help out. He does have some skill ceiling or, a floor that you need to hit to even be viable with the hero. So you have to practice the hero. I wouldn't just jump in and try to play ranked games with this hero if I didn't know how to play him. I'm not really an Earth Spirit player, but he is very good. And then lastly for S tier, we have Earthshaker. This hero, again, all these heroes were nerfed pretty much except for Earth Spirit, I think. And yet they're still at the top. They still get picked the most. They still have the best win rates. And that just is how it is because these heroes were pretty much very broken in the last patch. So even though the C patch adjusted it a little bit, they're still very good. And mainly Earthshaker, the thing that was nerfed with him was basically his off-lane / mid, his ability to play those positions because his right-click damage is not as good, or the talents were switched basically to make his extra enchant totem damage. It used to be at 15, now it's at 20, so it just kind of delays that to make him not as just one-shotting people once he gets level 15. And so because of that, this hero's still the same basically as a support because you're not going to be going that Ags build as often. I mean, you can still get it as a luxury item if you are rich, but honestly, a lot of times you're going to want to get something else just to help out the team, because mainly how you're playing this support is to just wait in the back, blink in, echo slam, all that kind of stuff, the typical things. You're not going to be jumping around right-clicking people with your enchant totem. But because that was the only thing that really was nerfed, this hero is still an amazing, amazing support right now. And again, doesn't do anything crazy, just has a lot of lockdown, a lot of stuns, does really, really good damage. There's a good amount of illusion heroes that are popular right now, and Naga's been around for a long time. There's a lot of melee heroes that run in, PA Sven, all this kind of stuff, that it's great if you can lock them down, if you can get the jump on them, or once their BKB runs out because they really rely on that, then Earthshaker can just go to town and perma stun them forever. So that's S tier, pretty straightforward. These heroes are really good in pretty much every game. I think Nature's Prophet's the only one that I would consider, maybe even Invoker, because they're just very unique broken ones that they may be falling down to more of a B, A tier once people figure them out and realize that they're not as broken as they once were in the last couple patches. But still, right now the win rates and the pick rates, these are all very good. And then A tier, they're all just great too. It's just the fact that, some games they may get countered. You have Keep the Light, doesn't do anything crazy different, just his overall numbers have gotten a little bit better. He was even on the mid tier list. A lot of mids play forward position and vice versa, so he's pretty good right now. He's just situational. You would love to have somebody that you can buff up with your chakra magic because that's always really important. If you don't have that, this hero as a support can just feel a little bit underwhelming. Bounty Hunter's still very good. Not picked a ton, but still very good in situational games. If you pick him in the right game, you will absolutely stomp. Vision is you just love to have that vision. He really trades extremely well with any support. So 4 and 5 position, you have to have the right matchup on the other side to fight into a bounty hunter. You have to have a lot of damage to scare him off. But if he can harass you, if he can just run in without fear and just kind of click you and back off, and then run in and click you and back off and just do that a lot, he will just dominate lanes. It can be very, very annoying. And then if you do get any money in this hero, you will be basically another core and you will just annoy the crap out of the enemy team. But the big problem with Bounty Hunter, the reason why he's not basically a better hero, an S tier hero, is because if you do have a bad laning stage and you can't just snowball the game and run after them and close the map in around them, you will have a problem because then you kind of just sit back and track, and then if they ever find you, they just kill you. So that can happen in a lot of Bounty Hunter games. Nyx Assassin is similar to Bounty Hunter in the sense that it has a similar kind of feel, where if you can't just hunt people down and kill them and the map closes in on you, it can feel pretty bad. The difference is Nyx Assassin, even if you're not soloing people, one-shotting them and all that kind of stuff, you can do, which if you are snowballing the game, you can do that for sure. If you're not doing that, you can still contribute in team fights because maybe you're just not going to go out in the front and scout and kill a support or something, but because they're pushing your base or whatever. But in a team fight, you can still click your abilities, and there's a lot of chaos happening. If you just wait for an initiation to happen, you can usually come in the back line, come in from the side, a flank, hit hit a core or hit a support and blow them up, and they're not really going to be able to respond as easily as, if you're just running around by yourself and they have a sentry down, they're just going to kill you. So that's one of those things that this hero is still very, very viable. It was like super broken, then got nerfed, then they buffed it recently, so it kind of has come back into a very good tier. I really like Nyx Assassin. He's like my favorite 4 position right now, because most games you can reliably get to this point where you have Dagon and all this stuff and you just blow people up. And like I said, you don't have to be hunting people down, but I think really merely the threat of hunting people down forces the enemy to play as 5, and they really don't want to play as 5. And that's kind of Bounty Hunter too. They really don't want to have to play as 5 because like the meta right now is having all 3 cores farming different parts of the jungle. And like you have 1 core mid, 1 core top, and 1 core bottom, like the whole game for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. They're just farming the whole map unless you're getting run over, because there's so much map to take up that that's what you want to be doing. But if there's a Nyx or a bounty in the game, it can be very hard to do that. You have to be babysit by supports all the time, sentries everywhere, very annoying. Grimstroke finally coming back as a real hero now. It's getting picked. It's way more popular. They've adjusted the timing on its stun and all these different things a bunch of different times, and finally they got it to the point where now you can cast his stun, and basically if you know that you or your core is going to chase after them and get the full duration, that's fantastic. But if you don't feel like, they're going to be able to last the whole time, like they're getting outrun, or their movement speed is lower, or they're slowed, or whatever's happening, and the enemy's going to escape the stun AoE, then all you have to do is you can end it now. So you can stun them preemptively, which is fantastic, because that just allows you to like guarantee your stun, where your stun was extremely unreliable before. Now it's way more reliable. Now, obviously, if you just cast it on your ally and then you stun them right after, like you end it right after, it's not a very long stun, but hey, at least it is something to cancel TPs and all that kind of stuff, which it's even better for now because you can do it really, really quickly. But regardless, it's just way more reliable, and that just makes the hero so much better, because any support that doesn't have a good reliable stun, it just feels underwhelming. Like you have to make up for it in other ways, and this hero didn't really do that. But now that the stun is fairly reliable, you have a better laning stage, you just have a better all-around game. Now all of your other spells, it just amps up their effectiveness because, you have this better stun ability. So that's pretty much the long and short of Grimstroke. Dark Willow, the biggest change with this is now, especially in certain matchups where you have like an axe or whatever, you can just put your ultimate on the axe. That's like the biggest change. Now this hero's extremely good because of that. So it's not like you just have to sacrifice your own hero by running in melee range and like using your ultimate. That's like kind of terrible. not like awful. Like it is good in some games, but it just feels awkward because like you're a squishy range support, and yes, you can go into your like ethereal realm or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't feel good to get into melee range. And so now you never have to. You just can sit back, you can cast your stuns, you can cast your brambles, you can cast your ultimate on an axe or any other, tanky initiator, whatever it is, even the mid or the carry, if they're like a PA or a Storm Spirit or whatever, jumping in. You can just cast it from behind, and then you don't have to put yourself in vulnerable positions anymore, and you can just be getting multiple rounds of spells off in every single fight, which is really good. That's basically the change that made the hero extremely good now. And then obviously, you can still do the same thing you used to be able to do if you get like a ton of items and gold. You can do like this right-click build with this hero. Even from 4 position, you can do that. Phoenix, just a very good team fighter right now. I don't know. I don't think there's anything special about the hero that got like super buffed, if I recall. I may have to look back into it, but it's not like there's any like fundamental change to the hero. It still does a lot of the same stuff. I just think they made the numbers overall a little bit better. Maybe I think they changed maybe the tick of the fire spirit happens like immediately, so you can't blink out. Like there's like little stuff like that. But I just think overall they made the hero better in a little ways. It hasn't really been in the meta for a long time, so now it's kind of finally coming back, which is very good to see. I think also because a lot of your cores have like a lot of items usually, they're usually pretty tanky. They have all these spells. They can jump in and protect you in a lot of cases. So there's that. You're not like 100% reliant to just jump in and be this like egg that just saves the fight. Like your teammates are going to have more items. The game is going to go longer, all that kind of stuff. And so Phoenix really excels in a very long game because the later it goes, if you get your third point in your ultimate, you're an extremely, extremely good late game here. It's very, very hard to kill the egg late game. Shadow Shaman, just like kind of your good stunner. I mean, if you don't have Earth Shaker, Earth Spirit, like these other good stunning heroes, this hero is just the best, like, stunning hero. It also has, obviously, the push that it's always had, but the stunning is really what this hero does, and it just overall, the numbers are pretty good on it. There's nothing special really to say about the hero. It hasn't had any significant changes. It's just like kind of your good basic stun support that can be viable from the 4 position because you do scale with items, which is very, very good. And then Doom is actually becoming more of a viable 4 position now with the change to make your ultimate stop regen. And from the 4 position, you basically don't have to care too much about, not like wasting Doom, you obviously don't want to do that, but it's way more effective as this, hey, there's this regen target, or this person that doesn't, somehow survives, or one of the real strengths is regen, I'm just going to cast my ability on them, and then they're dead. Now, the big problem with this hero is it's very greedy, but people are making it work. If you can get it to work, it can be very good. It's not picked that much, but when it is picked in the right games, it has a very, very high win rate. And then Spirit Breaker, I think Spirit Breaker is like Earth Shaker, just not as good, or Earth Spirit not as good, but then also kind of mixes in a little bit of Nyx Assassin in a way where, the enemy's just forced to group up, but also you're a very high stunning hero. Now, it kind of does work like Earth Shaker in the sense that earlier on, I mean, you're tanky and stuff, but you just kind of run up and you just punch him a little bit, and you don't have the best laning stage because of that. Now, you can stun from afar with Earthshaker. You can charge in, which is great. Allows you to gank, similar to Earth Spirit or Nature's Prophet. So there are obviously positives, but if you're just going to sit and static lane, that can be punished a lot because Spirit Breaker is not that great at that. Unless you have a very good partner in your lane, in the offlane that has stuns and damage and is very threatening as well, then you can usually team up and kill the support or kill the carry, but you can have some bad laning stages, and then if you're not snowballing the game or you guys aren't winning the laning stage, and then the enemy's kind of just able to do whatever they want, that can feel very annoying in the mid game because you're just kind of, you're trying to charge people, but your teammates just want to catch up. Your teammates just want to farm because they lost the lanes, and so they don't really want to gank with you, and that can feel pretty bad. But otherwise, a very, very good hero. Next, we have B tier. These are just kind of like standard run-of-the-mill classics, good in almost every game, but obviously has definite weaknesses. Rubik is a very good hero, but you have to be a good Rubik player, and sometimes late game, if you're not stealing the right spells, you can just feel useless. Like, yes, you have a good trading ability in the lane, and you're always going to have that kind of good laning stage, good right-click animation, good range, good damage, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but again, no spells, or you're not able to steal the spells. This hero can just feel like food sometimes. Skywrath Mage is kind of all or nothing in that way. You have to have someone to pair it with usually, unless you're having just an insane game and you just get a super early Rod of Atos, which is definitely possible, but you're all damage and 1 silence, which the silence is very long, but you have no stuns and like a little slow, but eventually people are going to be able to purge that or dodge it. So this here is just like all or nothing in a way. So it just sometimes feels like you're just like owning the game. You turn into another core and there's nothing the enemy can do. And then other games you just kind of feel useless and like your spells do nothing, or you just cast your ult and then people just run away. That happens a lot on this hero. Hoodwink, kind of this hero where, I don't know, it's just like average. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Some of these other heroes, Hoodwink always reminds me of like Grimstroke or Dark Willow, because they're just like these relatively squishy but somewhat elusive supports that have utility but a good amount of damage, but the stun isn't always reliable. Like, this guy's stun, it's more reliable now, but it's not always reliable. These stuns are roots, and it's like delayed stun. This stun like forces you to have trees around. It's like easily dodgeable a lot of the times unless you're just fighting in a bunch of trees. And then the other parts of the hero are like just damage or running away. I mean, the running away, it's like, that's fine. That's kind of like Murano in a way. And then the ultimate is great if you need a break. But otherwise, it's not the most reliable ultimate either, because you have to like skill shot it. So it's just one of those things where it can feel very, very good in some games, but also completely useless in others. And so that's why it's kind of middle of the pack. Shadow Demon, I think this is more of a 5. But that's why it's in the 4 position tier list. It's pretty good. It's getting picked a good bit, has a good win rate, and just does Shadow Demon things. I don't really play the hero very much. I feel like nobody plays the hero at lower or mid MMRs, or even my MMR, honestly. Like, nobody's picking Shadow Demon. But really the big thing with this hero is just like the constant purge. There's a lot of heroes that benefit from, buffs on themselves. Sven is a good one. Obviously, eventually he gets to the point where it's not dispellable, his armor and his buff. But for the most part, this hero is very good against that hero. And another hero, I believe, like Phantom Assassin. Phantom Assassin, with the way they changed the ultimate, it's not just like a chance to crit. You actually get a buff that you crit on the next hit. I believe Shadow Demon just completely purges that, so you can never crit. So I think this hero just has very good matchups against a lot of heroes. It's also very good for the save because there's a lot of heroes like Sven, like PA, that just want to jump in and burst people. And you just can't do that against a Shadow Demon because he's going to sit in the back line and save that ally, and then you can turn. Lion, just like another stunning average hero, just middle of the road, just not as good as Shadow Shaman. Really, these heroes are, I feel like, these heroes are kind of one and the same. They're very similar. This one has more reliable stuns. This one's a longer stun. This one's like burst damage, and this one's like tower push, that kind of thing. But this one's just, Lion's just a little bit worse right now, but he is middle of the road. Tusk, pretty decent. I think Tusk is more of a strength hero, and I would kind of categorize him in like a Spirit Breaker, Earthshaker, Earth Spirit kind of, mode. It's just a little bit more damage, a little bit more isolation, not as much ganking and those kinds of things. More budget Earthshaker in a way. Batrider, more of a support now than anything. His core win rates are absolutely abysmal, so he can function as a support fairly well, and he's pretty good at it. I've seen some Batrider supports just absolutely dominate, basically do everything, pretty much do everything that you can do from the core role, but just as a support, so you're not taking up that that farm and that space where you can just give it to another hero, which is very important. I don't know, I think that because they keep honestly, half the time I don't even know what this hero does. They keep changing everything about the hero. Like they make the sticky this, and then they make the, damage over time, and then they make it do damage, and then it doesn't do damage, and then it amps up the damage. It's just like they always change this hero all the time. They're giving it flying vision, then it doesn't, then it has more vision at night, then not at night, then it's just like, what does this hero even do? They change it all the time. But really, I think they always change the hero. It becomes broken, then they nerf the numbers, and now it's at this weird spot where it's like, oh, it's actually good as support because of the sticky and all this stuff. And I think you don't even skill sticky anymore. That's the other thing too. With the way the other abilities are able to do so much damage, I think from the support you don't even skill sticky napalm, which is very interesting. And then Dawnbreaker, just a very good hero. They did nerf her recently, but she's like an average support. You can play her from the 4 position. I would say you don't play her from the 5 as much, but from the 4 you definitely can. Does everything that you would normally do with Dawnbreaker. It's just that from the 4 position you're not going to be farming as much. You're not getting like Deso and all this other stuff, but you do have this save ultimate that is really good and has a stun through BKB. So I think that's really the reason that this hero is good, and it's also the reason this hero is viable as a 4 position, because as a support in general, because it really is a save similar to Shadow Demon or anything else, and now it's very reliable. Because before, in the past, once it got to 20 plus minutes, this hero was just not viable as a save, because yes, the enemy might heal, but if you're on like a troll or something, you just don't care. You click BKB, you press alt, like you're just hitting the guy through your ultimate, and the amount of heal that it's actually doing is not that much. But now, if you press your ultimate on an ally, they have to run away. The enemy has to run away, because there's just no way that they can stop themselves from being stunned, meaning they can't press BKB. And that's a huge difference, because just clicking this ability and forcing them to run away is a big, big deal later on in the game, because you're disrupting the team fight, you're turning, and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of times they're not going to be able to get away because they're stuns and all those kinds of things. C tier, these heroes are okay, relatively good. Marcy's at a weird spot. It feels like this hero's going to be good, but then just the win rate's terrible because they changed the ability with the lifesteal where now it's like permanently there, and you have to kind of be in range, but that doesn't really matter because this hero's just not really a ganker as much. I mean, you can do it, but you're just kind of going to be sitting in the lane and just like tossing people back and jumping in, stunning them, tossing people back, all that kind of stuff. And then you just have this lifesteal that you're giving to your off lane, and you have it too, and it just feels very, very good. Damage, lifesteal, all that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, the win rate's absolutely terrible. And I think maybe that's just because with all the ways they've changed the hero, after the laning stage, yeah, it might be very good, but then like, unless your ultimate is really good and you're just like transitioning into another core where you're blowing people up, this hero can feel like food. I feel like it's similar to Rubik in that way. Like, unless you're stealing spells and have very good impact, unless you're able to actually like man fight people with your ultimate, you just feel terrible. And I feel like we have Clinks and Techies. The reason why I kind of group these together is because these were the broken 4 positions like a few patches ago, and then they just got giga nerfed. They got nerfed a ton, and their win rate has plummeted. I still think they're semi-viable. Like, this hero is just straight up a right clicker from the 4 position, and this hero is like an insane magic damage beast, but a lot of the numbers got nerfed. Like the stun duration, I think, got nerfed on Techies and all this kind of stuff, and so they're just not nearly as good as they once were. They do the same thing, they're just not nearly as good. Clockwork is okay, but this hero's just always at an awkward position. Like, they keep buffing it to let it farm, they keep buffing all these different aspects to it, but it never really feels like it's that great, because eventually you just get to this point where you just like jump in and then you die, and you're like, great. So unless you're super snowballing the game, and even then sometimes it can feel bad, you're just like, yeah, maybe you transition to the super tanky guy that just they like can't even go on. You can definitely have games like that, but a lot of times these other heroes are just way easier to have snowbally games on. It's very rare that you have snowbally games on this hero because you're going to need to be running down people in the laning stage and like getting these solo kills, and then sometimes the matchups don't work out that way, and then you just feel like you're just this annoying strength hero just running around because you have similar weaknesses to these other strength heroes where you're just kind of like walking around, just kind of poking guys. Unless you can get your battery salt on them or whatever, then you just don't do anything and you trade poorly. Murano was good for a very long time. I think she's always semi-viable, but just now compared to some of these other heroes and what they do, it's like Hoodwink in that way, where you just have this leap that's like, that's great and all, but it doesn't really do much. And then you have an arrow, which is not a reliable stun. Your ultimate can never be counted out, sure, but you just don't feel as impactful as all of these other heroes that have these reliable damage, this reliable stun, these reliable everything else. When this hero, it's just like, okay, well, you better have some stun set up, and you better be able to jump in and use your magic damage ability, which doesn't even do that much damage. And really then, what are you, you're pressing R for invis, which I think the lower in MMR you go, the more, viable this is, the better that invis is, because people aren't going to have sentries and wards and dust and all that stuff. But still, that's just, I feel like that's kind of cheesy, and it's not nearly as good anymore as it used to be. Tiny's here because he's like semi-viable. He's not getting picked like at all, but when he is, his win rate is decent. I think he's just like better than some of these supports, which are very bad right now, and then these ones, or like they're not even 4 positions, but he's still good. He's probably like the worst of the strength heroes that do magic damage, burst and all this stuff, like Earthshaker and all these other ones. He's like pretty bad right now, but if you can get a good game, he can still be effective. Pudge is kind of similar to that. He's basically just like one of these strength heroes. You just got to hook people, If you're hooking people in the laning stage and you're good at Pudge, it can be viable, but the hero's win rate has dropped off a cliff from back when it was like even playing every core role. But people still pick it, that's fine. Pugna is like okay, but it does good damage, does good heal, but it's not nearly as good as it was. I feel like one of these things that Pugna will be really far down, it'll be terrible, and then it'll get some buffs or something and be like, S tier, this hero's insane. Remember when you could heal people and like you just click the heal button on them and they don't die, and then it's like, well, that we have to nerf that, so then it gets nerfed back down to like nothing, and still can work, but it's not as good, and that's just what happens all the time to Pugna. And then Zeus, it's just like all in damage. It's just like Skywrath Mage, but worse, because you're literally just all in damage. Where this at least has a slow and a silence, even if they're not super reliable after like 15-20 minutes. But this hero is just all damage. And then if you're not like snowballing the game, if you're not able to get your farm, and you like, if you pick this hero and then nobody else on your team picks a stun, you just like auto lose. That's pretty much how it works. And then D tier, these heroes are all really bad from the 4 position, I would say. Enchantress, Io, these heroes are just like not good right now for various reasons. Enchantress, I feel like always comes back, and maybe even Io too in the pro scene, but pubs right now, they're just like, they're not broken, so they're bad. And from the 4 position, it's just like they'd rather be 5, and that's kind of why too. Similar with Silencer, just rather be a 5. Similar with Venomancer, rather be a 5. A lot of these would just rather be a 5. People do pick them as 4, but they're not that great. They need like a lot of items and stuff to actually be like good as a 4 position. Primal Beast was kind of a 4 position for a while. Maybe this guy deserves C tier, but his win rate is abysmal right now as 4 position, so that's why I'm putting him down here. And then Gyrocopter is more of a carry now, but that, magic damage build is still sort of maybe viable and still kind of works, but not really as much. That's why they're D tier. They're in D tier. But the reason why some of them aren't in F tier is because these heroes are just like straight up, you cannot pick these heroes. Like Lena, not a 4. Queen, kind of sort of becoming a 4, but not really. Don't pick this hero's a 4. Not a 4. Hasn't been for a while. Like, don't pick it. Enigma's just trash. It has been trash for a long time. And now well, not a long time, but since they nerfed it, since they made Eidolons just like a castable ability, it's just absolutely terrible. And so it's just, because it's terrible even offlane, it's way worse as a support. So don't pick it. And then Snapfire was like good as a support. Then it became a godlike core. And now they nerfed everything about it, including the core version. And now it's just like, it's just not a hero. So it's not anything. I think the hero has like 30% win rate, so just don't pick it. And then all these heroes are like carry from the 4 position, and that's just not a thing right now. You can see these ones are like more utility, stuns, initiation, damage, but then also like some stuns, like a lot of silences or whatever you want to say, team fight. These are just like all like, hey, I'm a carry, and if you let me have a good game in this 4 position, I will snowball the game. Well, that's not happening right now, so don't pick these guys. That's all of them. So that is the 4 position tier list for patch 7.34C. As always, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all those kinds of things. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.